some people recommend that first a patient or somebody that might be navigating this on their own goes and starts switching towards a direction of a whole food diet, so that before they go on a little bit of a longer, fast, or they start even fasting for 24 hours, they're not going into almost like a deep detox that comes from going into that. What's your experience been with patients, especially ones that are more like eating processed foods, Oreos, junk food, other stuff? When they jump right into fasting, do you sometimes see that they have what would be seen as either detox symptoms or negative reaction when they first jump in?
Great question. Yes, this is the danger. Two things. One is they are truly addicted to this. And there's two forms of addiction that I've discovered with these patients. Well, not me discovered it, but through experience. Firstly, there's the psychological aspect that you've become Pavlovian. You come home and the first thing you want to do is gorge on some junk food. Okay, it's a Pavlovian. It's that house. It's that kitchen. It's that sofa. It's sometimes getting into your car that you dig for something. So we need to get rid of that Pavlovian reflex. So I tell patients, okay, when do you eat? What stimulates your thought about food? What makes you crave for it? Is it certain friends that make you do it, or a certain environment that do it? So those are all psychological cues, and then the second part of it is the true chemical addiction, which I do believe that is really true, because these processed foods, especially sugar is number one. It goes to the dopamine center. And now all of a sudden, the next time you eat sugar, you need more and more of it. And there's cravings. But you know what? Worse than the cravings, I have to point this out. Worse than the cravings are the fact that it changes your brain completely. There's actual neuronal pathway changes that occur in your brain. So when you are eating all those Oreos all the time, you've already got those pathways built into your brain, where the rostral pathways from your dopamine center and limbic system, which go to your frontal cortex, they downregulated. Now, what does that mean? That means that when you're addicted to that type of food, you can't think straight about that food. That means you've become a little dumber about the intelligence of your diet and your control over your diet, because it wants to continue to be addicted. So you don't get so smart about it, okay? Because if you get smart, you're going to not be an addict anymore. So it makes your frontal lobe go down in its function. And then it goes to the hippocampus. So there's connections that go to the hippocampus that actually make you remember that wonderful feeling that you had when you ate five really bad processed food items in a matter of 1 hour. So you get that. You got to break all these down. So yes, you're absolutely right. To break those neuronal pathways and the habit pathways, you got to bring in this slowly. So I do discuss with my patients, how far are they along the path of this processed food addiction, and what is the consumption? I mean, today it's really sad that almost 57% of all the calories that they're consuming these days are coming from processed or ultra processed foods. So you got to bring that number down. So changing the content of the diet first before we even introduce fasting. I think you're very right. You got to change what they're eating first. Because if you just go straight into dieting, they will get a lot of withdrawal symptoms. And then, as I said, they're going to be so dismayed and feel so bad, they'll fall off the bandwagon. They'll never come back again. So do make the change. You got to give them alternative foods. You got to show them that these foods are the ones that are non-addictive foods, that you got to get on, which is basically whole foods, real food. If it looks like that in nature, eat it. If it's going to go bad, eat it. If it's got a barcode on it, be suspicious. Don't touch it. If it's got a food label on it, be suspicious. Try not to read it or eat it. Just get rid of it. So just go for real food. So people come to me and say, you're a cardiologist, so I became a vegetarian and I don't eat meat anymore. And I was one of them that believed that meat, hey, this is bad stuff. I'm cardiology, FACC. I realized that the research doesn't support that. So why would red meat be bad for you? It can be. And my association with that, or my interest in that, is that if it's grain fed cows, they're going to have too much omega 6. That omega 6 is getting into you now. So that beef is not going to have the same concentration of fats of a cow that's eating grass, because that's a grass fed cow. It'll have more omega 3 and it'll have more saturated fat in it, not the omega 6s. You see, you are what you eat and what that ate. So meat is actually okay, provided it's grass finished and thereby it doesn't have all that omega 6 in it. Chicken is okay, organic chicken. And if eggs, organic eggs. I have no problem with these foods because they are whole, they're natural. And when I put my patients on these, I guess what? I get better compliance. Because I know you can go ahead and eat your egg. Have your egg for breakfast. Just get rid of the toast. Just have your 2 eggs for breakfast. Cardiologists saying 2 eggs are fine. Yes, because the cholesterol that's in the eggs is not what's going to raise your cholesterol level. Your cholesterol is what you're making mostly in your liver. So this type of education, they feel better about it and say, Doc, let me eat eggs. He lets me eat beef. He lets me eat chicken. Yeah, but I tell him it's got to be the right stuff. And then, of course, with it, you got to have your vegetables with it. So you got to make these changes in their diet so they're eating better quality food, better classes of food in the whole state with everything, just the way nature made it. If it's like that in nature, consume it. If it went to a factory and got changed, get rid of it. That's the bottom line.
It's the bottom line, and sometimes the simplest answers still take. It's an uphill battle against the entire way that society is organized around food and pleasure, and as you've mentioned, addiction. So I want to say, for anybody who's listening that is hearing this and is nodding their head along as they're listening or watching this, especially with you, Dr. J, working with patients, that there is so much past baggage that people have to let go of. Sometimes that's even trauma. Sometimes that's all sorts of different components as to, even though it's a simple answer, we know you're fighting an uphill battle. And for everybody who's listening that feels that they should be further along than they are, you're doing the best you can. And yes, there might still be changes that you want to make, and be gentle in the process, but keep on at it because you're headed in the right direction.
Yeah. Again, you are so far ahead of everyone because you understand that your eating behavior is also affected by what else is going on in your life. So if you have a job that's extremely stressful, you've had a lot of crises going on in your life, then at that point, I'm going to tell you, okay, you got to do this, and the other. It's going to be very difficult for you to do it. So when you look at dietary changes and behavioral changes in eating, you also got to look at the totality of the patient's life. How much stress is going on in his or her life? What kind of job? But now you're digging even more layers on that onion. You see what I'm saying? So you got to. It's so deep. It's a lifestyle. So you got to say to yourself, okay, Dr. J is not just talking to me about when to eat, how to eat, and what to eat. It's also talking to me about, am I happy? Am I peaceful? Do I have purpose? Do I have connection? Am I depressed? Because all these factors are also going to affect not only your eating habit, but also your general health. Let me give you an example. We look at the attributable risk of, let's say, hypertension or cholesterol to coronary artery disease. But have you looked at the attributable risk of things like depression? It's far worse. So if you're depressed, you're a sitting duck to have a heart attack. And nobody talks about that. They say, okay, let's look at your risk factors, or sit on your tummy if you're depressed. You fill this form up and tell you if you're depressed. And nobody's got time to. Your own family doctor doesn't have time to do that. And yet we don't realize that the attributable risk of depression and other psychological illnesses that you might actually have are far more. Do you feel connected? What's your understanding of your standing in society in general, or do you feel that you're at the bottom? Do you feel that you have confidence that you can talk with? All these things affect your physiology. So diet is one big part of it, but all these other things are so important. And I've got to tell you about this one study because this will really raise your curiosity on how I got involved with this. This was a study that was done at Johns Hopkins. They took medical students and obviously paid them for the experiment. You put an arterial line in the radial artery, and they were drawing out blood and putting it through a machine that measures your platelet reactivity. Okay, right? So they can tell moment to moment, because it's done through light, as to whether the platelets are aggregating or not. So platelets, as you know, are those tiny little particles that make your blood clot, make your blood sticky, which you don't want, because you want your arteries to be free flowing. So what happened is that they gave them a test while they're doing this, and they flip through the page, they answer the questions, and the platelets are happy. And then they turn the page, and now you got a question that on a subject that you were never taught. These kids go crazy now. Oh my God, I don't know the answer. And guess what happened to the platelet reactivity? Changed instantaneously. Wow. This is so fascinating that and I read the study about 30 years ago, and it stuck with me. But it showed me how your moment to moment, I'm not saying wrong, even moment to moment perception of stress affects your physiology. This is just one example. I've got hundreds of examples I can show you of how your mental state affects your physiology, and how your body reacts on a moment-to-moment basis, down to even expression of angiotensin II receptors in your endothelium and your blood vessels. So whether you're going to actually clot right now or you're going to flow, and the number of receptors that are expressed we say that we have these angiotensin II receptors in our cells, right? So we think they're fixed. They're not. 3/4 of them are involuted. They don't express themselves. Now, under certain circumstances, they'll all of a sudden express themselves. And that the stimulus for the expression of those receptors could be dietary, but more so, it can also be psychological, how you feel. And it's amazing to me that 50,000 receptors, now all of a sudden there are 100,000 expressing themselves. So now when the angiotensin comes along, you're going to get a hypertensive blood pressure response. Suddenly your blood pressure goes up. So we have these biochemical pathways, we know about it. But nobody's saying that, okay, fine, let's look at your diet, but also, come on, get a handle on your life. Let's decrease the stress levels. Let's do some meditation.
Hey YouTube, it's Drew. If you liked this clip with Dr. Pradip, you gotta check out the full episode right over here.
The number of visitors that come see a patient after open heart surgery dictates how well that patient's going to recover. I mean, it's ridiculous. The complication rates are higher if that person has no visitors. Well, what's that got to do